Irashaimase. Hello and welcome to Fitaurus Kitchen. I'm your host, Chef Fitaurus. It's time once again for Shoot 'em Up Saturday, and on the menu this Saturday we have Zed Blade, the latest shoot 'em up from the Arcade Archive NEO GEO collection. What kind of taste will it have? Let's get cooking and find out. So another fine release from Hamster, we have the usual Arcade Archive trappings here. We've got the English version, the Japanese version, which is named Operation Ragnarok, and then we also have their usual high score and caravan modes that they include for the NEO GEO titles. As we start the game, we're taken to our controls, and it should be of interesting note that this is the first Switch title that I'm playing for Shoot 'em Up Saturday and also for the Arcade Archive collection. So you've got the two different sets of buttons that you could potentially be using for your setup. A lot of these buttons are not really used, but still it's nice that you see all your possible options here. Starting the game itself, NEO GEO Max 330 Mega Pro Gear Spec. We'll go ahead and throw some credits into the machine and press start. Here we're taken to our character and weapon select. So we've got three characters we can choose between. Uncle Beard, who has slow speed, Miss Charlotte, who's middle speed, and then Swift Arnold, who has high speed, and that's what we want. So we'll take Swift Arnold, then we get to select our shot, three-way, wave, and vertical. Wave is the one I like the best. Missile, homing, anti-surface, and anti-air. We'll go anti-air, and then rear. Two-way, wave, and twin. This one doesn't matter to me as much, so we'll just go ahead and select twin. Real quick before the game gets started, I'm going to go into the button selection and turn on the rapid fire. One of the nice conveniences that was provided by using an emulation system. And with that, battle is begun. Good luck. We have Zed Blade, or Operation Ragnarok as it's known in Japan. So we have our main shot, and as we fire, it fires all of our weapons simultaneously. So we have our missile that's firing, as well as our rear shot. So a pretty decent amount of firepower all told. Depending on your configuration, though, it might be more effective or less effective. The rear really doesn't come into play a whole lot. There are some stages that have more enemies coming from behind than others, so your mileage with that one might vary. The reason I picked the anti-air missile over the other choices, the homing or the anti-surface has limited usage, and the homing just isn't as powerful as these missiles. I really do like adding more power to our forward-firing weaponry. So when you die, the game is relatively generous and gives you 2 fresh power-ups upon your respawning. In addition, you're only losing 1 level of power-up. You're not actually going all the way back to base power, which is something that's quite nice. We can collect power-ups for all 3 of our weapons, the missiles, the rear, and our main shot, which is denoted by a P, for up to 4 levels. Anything past that, and we'll just get 5,000 points per power-up. Another pickup that we can get, or rather, another 2 pickups we can get, that blue spinny, like, oval that I picked up, is the Hyper Bomb. We can also pick up other, like, bombs for our bomb stock. And I'm not 100% sure how many you can carry, but we can at least stock up to 5. So, by itself, the bomb is decently powerful, but with the Hyper Bomb, it deals maximum damage and is very effective at clearing out enemies, and in particular, taking out bosses. Warning, major enemy is approaching. Rock Carrier. We'll just drive all around the Rock Carrier. So one thing I really like about Operation Ragnarok, all these bosses that are, well, not just bosses, enemies that are comprised of all these linked sprites. there's a lot of interesting sprite manipulation going on here, and it's something that I think is just awesome to witness. A little bit of slowdown, however, from having too many shots / sprites on screen, and stage 1 down. So, moving on to the story, humanity has gotten to advanced enough that they could travel the solar system. So, of course, we developed this massive automated space station named Yggdrasil that we launched to set up a space frontier. But, like, fast forward after launching that a few months, and Yggdrasil is no longer communicating with Earth. Like another set of time afterwards, and suddenly it's launching these attacks with advanced warships against the Earth. And, well, we can't have that, so 3 of the Earth's best pilots are selected to take back Yggdrasil, or destroy it, whatever the case may be. And Operation Ragnarok is launched. So of course you've got the Norse mythology in there, and it makes sense that a game like that would be titled Operation Ragnarok. So the English title Zed Blade is bizarre. It makes no sense to me whatsoever. Why Zed? Let's see, why Blade? Even, well, I guess there are some enemies that are carrying blade-like weapons, but it's not like they really use them. So I'm just confused as to why they would have retitled the game itself. Operation Ragnarok, since you're actually participating in Operation Ragnarok, makes so much more sense to me. But, story aside, it actually has some interesting history behind it as well. So, it was released in 1994 on the NEO GEO MVS arcade system by NMK. Major enemy is approaching! We've got Lunar Walker. So this enemy here reminds me quite a bit of one of the bosses you fight in... Actually, a couple of the bosses you fight in Gunstar Hero. It's really awesome. But anyway, this was developed by the developer NMK, and as far as I can tell, this was their final title. It did come out on the NEO GEO MVS system and was slated for a home port, but that home port was never released. It was cancelled, even though, at least from the information I could find, and there's not very much about this game, it was completed. So a little bit of bizarre history there. NMK, as far as I could discover, they'd spent about 5 years developing various shoot-em-ups for multiple platforms in most cases, including the Neo Geo, but there were also some for the Amiga and the Spectrum and some other really interesting platforms. So I couldn't find much information on them. I wonder if with some of those systems that they developed for, if they might have been a European developer, but once again, I just couldn't find any information on it. Anyway, the game does take place over a course of 7 stages. No, sorry, not 7 stages. Over the course of 8 stages. And one of the things that I really do like about it is you get different encounters, different enemies in each of those stages. So here we're introduced to those like slime enemies that separate as we initially shoot them and then like chase us down. And they're definitely annoying. This particular little like large enemy that we've encountered here, we do come across multiple times. So that's basically Zed Blade. It's also, since it is available on the Nintendo Switch, I did play a little bit with it in the Switch's portable mode, and it plays really great that way. So if you're looking for portable shoot-'em-up to play on your Switch, this isn't necessarily a bad choice either. So what do I have for my minus flavors? Well, the game itself, while it's got some really neat elements with the sprite animations, it's like it feels generic. we don't really do much with our ship or our abilities. We've got like a shot and a bomb, and that's really it. There's not really any unique scoring elements to it. So yeah, that's just its like biggest issue, is it just feels a little generic. Although we do have these awesome crystalline dragons that breathe fire and separate out into all these awesome pieces when defeated. Also, our hitbox is really large. As large as the ship appears on screen, that basically feels like what our hitbox is. And then, with how many sprites we have on screen, often, with both enemy shots, enemies, and our own shots, there's a lot of times where the system itself slows down. That said, there are a lot of plus flavors as well. And one of those is all the unique sprites. Across the 8 stages, up until the very last 1 or 2 stages, we're seeing unique enemies in every stage, and I think that's awesome. And it gives each stage its own unique feel to it, and I can really appreciate that. There's also a really interesting soundtrack that if you've been listening to that the game itself has, that doesn't necessarily feel like it fits the best, but quirky as it may be, I do like it. And of course, along with the first point where you have all these unique enemy sprites, you also have all the great sprite animation that they employed with all the sprites being linked together. Really similar to, the game had a little bit of a treasure feel almost to it with the way that they did that. And those being some of my favorite shoot 'em up slash games, it was really something that I thought was neat. Moving on to stage 4, the asteroid belt. So there we have it, Zed Blade served up for your enjoyment. One that really seems like an obscure shoot 'em up, but I'm glad that Hamster brought it to the arcade archives and brought the game to my attention. It's, like I said, a little on the generic side, but it's one that I've enjoyed my time with. So if you're looking for another shoot 'em up to add to your Switch collection, as there are only a handful so far, this is a worthy entrant for the cost of entry. And that'll just about wrap up this week's episode of Shoot 'em Up Saturday. As always, I want to thank you so much for coming out and joining me this week, and I look forward to seeing you again next week.